Hello everybody, Cryo here. I've got a new kind of elementalist build video for you. In this series, once per video, we're going to go through each of the new Grandmaster traits and create a build that optimizes the use of each individual trait. Starting today with Blinding Ashes. I've made a build and we're going to talk about it and see how to optimize that trait. This is not the best build video for each trait. This is just a build that I think is in the spirit of what the designers thought this trait should be used for. This is just my opinion. The builds will be effective, but they may not be the best. Let's get started with Blinding Ashes. We go 30 points into the fire tree so that we can take Blinding Ashes. Blind foes that you burn, 5-second internal cooldown, 5-second base blind. Now, something I want to note about this is it does not work on multiple foes. So as soon as you blind someone, it goes onto a 5-second cooldown. It does not have a different cooldown for each person you're blinding, unlike, say, Glyph of Elemental Power, which has a separate internal cooldown for each person that you would apply the condition to. Which means if you're fighting a Mesmer, or a Ranger, or a Thief, and you use, say, Drake's Breath, you'll apply Burning to probably the pet and them, and it'll blind one of the two. It might blind the Mesmer clone instead of the Mesmer. It might blind the Thief summon instead of the Thief himself, and this can be a big problem. So you've got to be very, very careful when you're using this trait. You want to try and proc it on single target abilities. So keep that in mind when we're using it. One thing I want to note here, we're 30 points in fire. That screams to me we have a lot of power and a lot of condition duration, which is kind of hybrid. So a lot of builds where I'm 30 in fire, I want to go hybrid because it makes best use of condition duration. But we're not going to go hybrid in this one. Instead, you'll see we are using a Berserker's Amulet. And we'll talk more about why we're using that later. So let's talk a little bit about how I want to play this build. What this trait does is it makes your opponent miss one attack every 5 seconds. How can we optimize this? Well, it's not that great to begin with. It's hard to decide when to use it because it's on a 5-second internal cooldown and you've got a lot of different abilities that apply burning. So using it is kind of random, honestly. It's not so consistent. But it does blind an attack every 5 seconds, so long as you can burn every 5 seconds. And to burn every 5 seconds, we use Glyph of Elemental Power. So this is inherently a defensive trait in the fire line. It's a defensive Grandmaster trait. Well, how can we optimize having our opponent miss an attack? If they're going to miss attacks, that means we can build a little more offensively and keep the same amount of defense because we're taking a defensive Grandmaster trait. So let's look at the next one. 10% more damage to burning foes. We definitely want to take advantage of 10% damage. So again, we want to have a lot of burning. 5 seconds of burning from Elemental Power, 5-second cooldown. That's a lot of burning, a lot of damage increase. We supplement that with Burning Precision. Chance on critical hit to cause burning. We're using a Berserker's Amulet, remember, so we have 39% crit chance, and we are in Arcane, so we have a good uptime on Fury as well. So we have a lot of crit chance. This will proc pretty often, and help supplement the little pieces of burning that this might miss. As in, sometimes, since it's only a 25% trigger chance on attack, sometimes when the internal cooldown is done, you might have to attack 4 or 5 times before it'll actually apply burning again, where this will fill in those little gaps and stack up the burning even higher. So there is room to have both of these. We have burns you apply last longer. That's just so that we can maintain this and get a little more burning damage. After all, as you can see here, burning does quite a bit of damage. Even if you have 0 condition damage, I think we have 0 with this build, yeah, it still does a good amount of damage to have just stuck on your opponent. And when they see that burning, they're going to want to remove it, which draws their attention elsewhere. Sunspot sucks. Flame Barrier sucks unless you take the trait here, which also sucks. It's one with fire. Not much use of that unless you want to trick people a little bit, but we'll not go into that. Next, we put 2 points into into air with Bolt to the Heart and Zephyr Speed. Zephyr Speed is not that useful. We're using Elemental Attunement, so we have swiftness from that, but it's okay. Bolt to the Heart, however, is really, really good. We also have the choice here of taking quick glyphs to get a higher uptime on elemental power and a lower cooldown on our heal, which is also a reasonable choice. I chose Bolt to the Heart because I wanted more offense and more damage. I want to really burst people down with this build. Now, 30 in Arcane. Here comes the real magic synergy of the build. Elemental Surge with Arcane Power. I'm running a dagger so that in air, when I activate Arcane Power, my attacks will crit and they will blind. And if I activated Glyph of Elemental Power while in Fire Attunement, they will burn and blind. That means my attacks are burning, blinding, and critting for the next 5 attacks. So what you'll want to do is start in Fire Attunement, activate Elemental Power, then you're going to switch to air, hit them, proc the burning and the blind, and then activate your Arcane Power. So when you activate the Arcane Power, you've already used this blind, and now you're going to be blinding with each Lightning Whip hit, or blinding with Lightning Touch. But they're also going to crit each time, and we have a good amount of critical damage. So what this does, really, is for a few seconds, and Glyph of Arcane Power is area of effect, so if you use Lightning Whip, it will apply blinding to all the targets you hit, but only 5 hits maximum. So if you hit 5 targets, all 5 stacks of Arcane Power are gone. So you want to be careful and try and only hit 1 target at a time. So once again, we're blinding them and burning them while critting them a lot. You do a lot of damage really fast just by spamming Lightning Whip, knocking them down, and blinding them. They can't hit you back. They're just going to keep getting blinded for the next few seconds. When they're finally done getting blinded, you can immobilize them if you want using Arcane Wave in Earth Attunement. You can knock them down. You can daze them. Whatever you want to do, get them away for a little bit. Get ready to burst again. If you find an opponent who's already low and you use your critical striking Lightning Whips, you can down them really, really fast. The Lightning Whips will crit for probably 1,300 each attack. That means that by the time the 5 are up, they'll have taken probably 7,000 damage just from Lightning Whips. Not to mention the burning. And all of this time, they can't hit you. So who's this effective against? Why did I make this? Thieves and Mesmers. This is really effective against Thieves and Mesmers because Thieves aren't used to really getting blinded a whole bunch unless they're fighting another Thief. No one's really expecting the Elementalist to spam blinds and do a whole lot of damage really fast. That's kind of what a Thief is supposed to do. In other words, I'm building this like a Thief. Blinding, doing high burst damage, and then backing away, or becoming invincible, or rooting them. Whatever you have to do, get away, wait so that you can burst them again. This is like a Thief. This is exactly what a Thief does. We're just making the Elementalist into a Thief, basically, using blinding ashes, blinds on here, blinds or other conditions here. One other interesting thing you can do is you can play really defensive with this build. You can switch into air and use Glyph of Elemental Power so that it applies weakness. That means that they're going to be doing significantly less damage and have less endurance regeneration. 100% uptime. Look at that, 7 3/4 seconds. It's almost 8 seconds every 5 seconds. It's going to apply permanent weakness. That's really strong, especially because you can do that AoE with Lightning Whip. That's a whole lot of weakness. Also, you can switch to Water Attunement and use your arcane power to now apply AoE chilled for 4 seconds, and then AoE chilled here again for 4 seconds. But that's 4 seconds 5 times. That's unlimited chill, basically. Until they remove it, they will be chilled. And then you can just apply it again right after. But basically, weakness and chilled on your target means they really can't do anything. So all of these defensive abilities that we use are really well supplemented by offensive stats, which are Berserker's Amulet, Rune of the Ogre, Sigil of Air, and Sigil of Energy is actually defensive. So these three. So we're taking offensive stats and defensive traits. But we're able to take defensive traits in the offensive trait line of Fire and the balanced trait line of Arcane. These are mostly defensive. This can apply Burning, but we don't use it much for that. It's pretty much defensive. So that's the build. Basically playing an Elementalist like a thief. Thanks for watching, and look forward to the next video on Lightning Rod.